that's involved, because we actually want to get you to tell us what you're doing as well. But we're going to kick it off, as in Active Plan's going to kick it off explaining what we do, because I think that's the first part of it, and then we'll ask you to contribute your things. We actually have got lots of relationships with other software companies, and the reason I'm mentioning this is that what we're doing here is data engineering to connect things together. So part of what we're doing here is this is just an example. This is where we're, for a particular client, this is a fire stopping report that's as a PDF, as a document. And in fact, actually, there's 42 documents that go to make this up, each of which has got 150 pages. So what we've been doing is looking at how we can take information from the locations in this PDF document, and then which that identifies the unique reference for that particular fire stopping asset. But it's a real pain for asset managers to be able to work out which fire stopping assets are across that corridor. So what we've done, we've used data engineering to actually go through and extract information for the locations from these, and we've then read that into the database. So there we've got the tag number for each item and its location. And Tim's going to show you an example of how we've done that a bit later on. But the key thing about it is that it means that all of those fire stopping assets can then be viewed in a single view. And as you'll see in a moment, we can also then overlay other information such as fire doors and things like that. So this is just illustrating how, by using data engineering and reading it into the database, the information that was locked in that PDF now becomes real intelligent asset data. And this is very exciting for me. I know that's sad, but it's a way of really unlocking information that's otherwise just in a document that is difficult to manually interpret. So what we can also do here is turn on the fire compartmentation drawings, so you can actually see where that particular fire stopping asset is in the context of the rest of the plan. And also we can then look at the doors. So within that same spatial model, we can then illustrate where the fire doors are, and be able then to drill into the fire doors. And this has come from a door schedule and an ironmongery schedule that have now been glued together using data engineering, so that we've actually got that as a coherent set of asset information. And that means that from a building safety point of view, we've actually got the safety critical assets and how they're related to each other in a way that is very sort of joined up. It also means that we can hold documents against those items, because we've got a product library again that holds that information. So I'm now going to hand over to Andrew Handley, who can start showing the type of methodologies that he uses as a normal BIM user, and probably somebody that would be similar to you. Andrew.
Thank you. Just waiting to see whether the PowerPoint.
Just calling you back.
Yes, hopefully you can.
Yeah, see it perfectly.
Good, okay. So yes, thank you, George. As George said, I'm going to start the trilogy of presentations with the normal user. So what are normal users? Well, typically they would be the likes of architects, surveyors, project managers. So that's sort of type of people within active plans. Myself and Richard highlighted there. Could equally be Chris does get involved, those types of things as well. So maybe also known as the no-code or low-code user. So you're going to hear from a lot of very clever people who use a lot of code to do very smart things. Me as a normal user, I can't do that. It's not my skill set. So we're solving basic problems, generally getting a job done to deliver efficiently. We are sorting, or you might say engineering data. We're working with it in isolated, discrete steps, normally in much larger workflows. And those deliverables are generally, can also be rather to experts for further data engineering or even AI development work. So as a normal user, I would say I'm currently only using AI as a subset of internet searching. I have no illusions about how basic my use of AI is. So it's data engineering by any other name? Well, because even as a normal user, we are actually making the data accessible and usable for various data-driven activities, as I said already, including AI by individuals and organizations. Probably the best and easiest example that we're going to use in what I'm going to show is the COBie schema. So this is something that's been around for a long time. It's a way of reducing drawings, models, schedules down into a very simple spreadsheet with interrelated worksheets. So what are the problems I'm going to look at? Well, construction is inherently unstructured. Commonly, everything's been created with, dare we say, a rather myopic view. We don't generally tend to see others around us. We have got better at working together, but we do all tend to, as project team members, still have a very kind of singular view of things. Teams are now routinely providing data, most commonly in COBie, but this data still has gaps and issues that need fixing. So the three examples I'm going to look at in sort of increasing levels of apparent sophistication are the clients and users who want a bespoke presentation of their data, so they're perhaps unable or unwilling to work with COBie in its raw form. The problems of long project durations, so building construction programs tend to be measured in years, not in weeks or months, and the never-ending recurring challenge of spatial coordination. So what are some of the solutions to this? Well, to the first two, it's Excel and a bit of, beyond the basic one, a bit of VBA, a bit of Visual Basic for applications. The third one, the only real way to deal with this issue of coordination is actually directly in the model. So clients and users want a bespoke presentation of their data. So let's say in this case, we have a client who wants their asset codes, but they're not willing to look in the attribute sheet. They want to be way back over in the type sheet. So all they simply want is these, taking back and displaying. So we can very simply just use simple functions and standard formulas to a lookup and send that back based upon the type names. However, the client then later in the program complicates it by saying, I don't think some of these codes are right. I want you to update them. So they then have to be fed back into the model and into the COBie data, which means we then have to perhaps look at using another bit of standard, just a very simple if statement to do a check of, as they are doing those revisions, is it matching what we're seeing in the model, and then make sure we're feeding that back in so that the right information is in the right place. So in the next one, long project durations. This is using a bit of VBA macros. So bear with me a second. So in this case, it's to do with the uniclass classification tables, which are updated quarterly. This means there are change logs and revisions that need updating 4 times a year. So we get quarterly updates. There are 15 tables, change logs plus revisions. That's going to equal at least 120 data updates per annum that have to be dealt with. I don't want to have to do that 120 times. I want to find a way of automating that, being efficient and getting the data accurate. The nice thing is that the format of the tables has now been consistent for years. So a simple bit of VBA means that we can run you can see they are very basic VBA script, deal with the change logs, and to deal with every time the issue updates to the actual tables. It's not very impressive. It helps me. What it does mean is that the Excel is then up to date and can be applied in many different places. So that small change in automation results in an Excel worksheet. So I think the audio just dropped out there for a second. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, it's fine now, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, you can feed that back into Revit, into AIRS, into COBie validators, or R validator, into PIM, and even into AutoCAD. So you could update your layer classifications, for example. And the final one, most visual. So in in Revit, models are used for a diverse range of deliverables, but we get quite often a problem whereby the coordinates that are being put out for the COBie are not coordinated. I won't go into the complexities of the technicalities of why that happens. So the data challenge here is that we want to make those changes without actually changing the underlying model. So this visually is the problem. All these lovely little markers, these coordinate points, they should all be in the same place. You can see they're not all in the same place. So we need to find a way of fixing this or getting the data, because I'm not trying to fix this, that's not our job, is to get the data we need. And this visually is the problem that we get. Here is the outline for the project and all the spaces. Here are the points from one of the other files that don't fit inside the architecture. So we need to get all of these to appear to be here to get those values out so we can actually use them without changing the model. Dynamo lets us build a graph, convenient nodes. This is the low code. This is me as a non-coding person just plugging things together. So we start by going and getting all the things that are linked in, gathering up all the things we need to get the coordinates for. We then build a copy of all of those things that we need to get the correct coordinates for to pass them through later. And then we also go and get for both of the things, the thing we're in and the thing we're trying to correct, what are the base points? So we can do the maths of correcting that difference we saw between the points. So what happens is we end up with these are all points when they were not correct. And when it's run, we get all the points in the, you can see within the boundaries, it's now all up within the building. So when we export this out into Excel, we end up with a collection of values, X, Y, and Z values as in coordinates that are now all correct and fit within the COBie correctly. That's me done. Thank you very much. Now, how do I stop sharing?
Excellent. Excellent. Well, that was quite mind-boggling, actually. I'm sort of, my head's still running a little bit. I want to ask a couple of questions, actually, to get the ball rolling. So when you say normal user, is that normal user the person who's doing the data engineering? Or is it the normal user who's going to be using the results of the data engineering?
It's the creator. It's not the end, or in these examples, not the end user. So I'm showing three examples of things that within my day-to-day job at ActivePlan I find myself doing to provide people with, increasingly, the first one is very visible to the client. It's something that they can articulate. The latter two, so this example is still on the screen, I believe, that is not visible to the people who actually created the models, because I'm not the creator, I'm just fixing those underlying issues. Because of the diverse range of jobs that the models and the output from the models are serving on a project, it's not realistic to go back and say to the creators, you've got this wrong, because this is a very small part of a very big set of things they're doing that doesn't work because of a very particular requirement. So we create what is needed, so we don't have to go back and ask them to do things that would just consume too much time and still probably wouldn't actually be, we'd spend more time trying to explain it than just coming up with solutions like this.
So Richard, could I just, thank you, Andrew, could I just ask the group, how many people are using Dynamo on the group? Could you put your, I think probably put something in the chat.
Similar, we're not singling out Revit here or using GDL or any other comparator.
Yeah. Sorry, yes.
It's all right. No, just make it agnostic. We're not.
Yeah. So
Pierre's using Dynamo, Brian's using none, Jonathan none, Mark is using Dynamo.
It's quite common, Richard. A lot of people who are BIM coordinators might use this. I think the important thing here is to recognize that the model may look perfect from a visual perspective. What we're talking about here is the underlying data. And what Andrew is doing here is illustrating how he actually corrects the underlying data so that we've got asset data in the right location, so it's in the right spaces and the right from an asset management point of view. Is that valid?
Yeah, I'm going to slightly contradict George and say the problem here is it's a mixture of everything George just said, plus the limitations of things like the Revit COBie add-in and needing to come up with something that was practical and worked and not offering so many.
Yeah.
Basically, you cannot by default define which origin points to use to create coordinates. It uses the commonly unseen internal origin that most of us modeling and producing, delivering projects never get involved with and never look at and never think about. So it is a very the right expression. It's a very unique problem to COBie, but it's not a reason not to use COBie. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody else that's got any experience of this or any questions, or should we move on to the next stage?
Yeah, it's does anybody believe that they're using data engineering? Are people in their current companies currently doing what Andrew's doing? Or are they aware that this is going on? Well, I thought you were probably doing it, Andrew.
I like I am.
Yeah.
I think the part I'd go through, Andrew, is that we need to stop doing things where we do it repeatedly and we don't correct it from at the root, and everybody then picks up on that, never to have to do it again. So the idea that when you take a Revit file and you create it, the internal origin is there. And there are certain things which are crucial that you have it in the same position because automatically things align if you move and do various manipulations.
Yes.
My big concern is sending it back to the owner, the author, and correcting it there, because downstream it means that we've got certainty that it's owned by somebody and that it's in the correct position, contains the right data, etc. So it's principally just getting that workflow right so that we don't redo work, because what's happening is that you've done it there. When you pass it on to another party and they get the one which is the black version, suddenly they have to go through the same process and redevelop stuff. And it's to get rid of that, to make it owner and user very clear. Sorry, that's it. Thank you.
I think we agree with you, Pierre, but also pragmatically, we've got to deliver projects. So, okay, should we move on?
George.
Sorry.
No, you had your hand up.
It was briefly. Hi everyone. Good to join you all. I think the one thing that I just wanted to say is there's probably something in between. So I'm seeing a very good number of companies, like effectively, like Excel exists in this world where it isn't a database, and that ends up resulting in all kinds of challenges. Revit is a database to a degree that then isn't really optimizing for these types of things. I'm seeing an in-between where generally no-code tools are starting to be used to remove a lot of the effort that takes. And then companies use everything that ranges from an Airtable and a Smartsheet to Morta, which is the product that like we own. But that ends up, because these relationships are then baked in, that then removes the need to then model all of these types of things within Dynamo and the likes thereof. But I can talk through that at some point. So I generally think where things are going is there's going to be less data engineering in this side of things, at least, rather than more. And this has only been needed historically because people haven't been using databases for things like COBie to begin with. So we're stitching together after the fact rather than getting connected data to begin with.
To go back to the previous point, the previous comment that was made, what you're just saying is, I think our view on this is, from a lot of experience in projects now, it's getting this embedded in the requirements and everyone understanding this is, I think a lot of the issues we're showing here are because asset information is bolted on after the project started. So, being sort of defensive about some of the people who are producing this, they are producing what they were asked to produce. The problems we're solving is because someone has invariably come along and said, actually I want asset information out of this, and that wasn't actually considered and built in into the requirements at the beginning, and therefore checks aren't being done, like, are you all actually working to, setting out in a grid file for the whole project? Because the project isn't viewed, that's not viewed as important. We just, the deliverables in a lot of cases are still within the contract. Just give us a mountain of drawings. So a lot of the consultants quite rightly turn around and say, model isn't a deliverable. Yeah, I agree.
That's good. Thank you. Andrew, can I ask you to stop sharing?
Yeah, I will do my best. Hang on.
Yeah, I know that one.
There we go. I think that's worked.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. And we have a real life data engineer with us, highly experienced, Chris Aldridge. And you're on mute, Chris. There you go.
Yeah,
Hi.
Yeah, schoolboy error, I know. Right. So I'm a data engineer and get involved in integration products for our Active Plan. And I'm here to talk about Power Query, which I like to think of as better than look, but not quite magic. Can you see that? That's my catchphrase. I'll give them
Absolutely.
In that Power Query sits between, the random number generator that is Excel and the magic that AI promises to be and has the potential to be. So it sits fairly comfortable in that middle ground. I'm still using it to sort of fix the same sort of tools that Andrew's working on, to fix the same sort of data. So an awful lot of this is about transforming data from one format into another format where it can be more useful or more readily consumed by other systems, And Excel is great. I spent my decades using it, but it's still too easy to end up sharing broken data. Formulas can break. You can end up with a million columns. We're all familiar with these refs popping up when you delete things that you didn't mean to, and it's very hard. Where you have to be very disciplined to use it in a way that's reusable as more things come in. You always end up starting from scratch. And if it's a large file, then you can almost forget about it. It grinds to a halt. You can save it before it's finished processing the cells, and that again leads to data corruption. So it's great. Small, fast jobs, great. Don't let it anywhere near dates, because we all know that sort of messes them up. So this column here is a good example of that. These are actually 2-character codes that Excel's decided should be a date. And Excel, that takes a nightmare. That takes a while to sort out. So that's where Power Query comes in. Power Query is this data transformation tool that's supplied by Microsoft. Now, if you've got Excel installed or Power BI is already installed, I've never come across an installation where it doesn't get installed. So it's there and ready to go. And I came across it through my use of Power BI, which is the sort of presentation face, if you like, where you can show the benefits and show the value in the data that you've engineered. But it's there. It's not a tool in the same way. Could look very Excel-like, but it's not a tool in the same way. It's not about data entry. It's not about going in and changing individual cells or doing lots of manual things. It's about setting up repeatable processes that can deal with large files and you can get predictable outcomes from. Right, so I'm now going to screen share live, which might be a bit hairy, but we'll give it a go. And so I can take you through some of that. So, oops. Just as an illustration of what I was talking about before, here's, go back, not sure if we can change that. I've imported this, and there was 2-character codes down here that, first of all, Excel changed to full-on dates, and then when I change the format into text, changes it to numbers. So that's the kind of thing, and you can lose hours trying to fix that. We've got columns here like this one where we've got spaces at the beginning, and yes, we can trim them. It's fairly easy to trim it. You can insert column, so trim, and I know it's great watching other people code many times and do those sort of things, but then I've got this column that's right now, delete this column, And again, my formula's gone. I've lost data, and here, we can quite easily split that over several columns by saying, okay, I want a delimiter. I want that to be a colon. Finish. And if I miss that, I've suddenly lost data in my other columns. And although it's easy to spot when you're dealing with 4 lines, again, if you're dealing with tens of thousands of lines, they're the sort of errors that you miss until you deliver it to the client and they're asking why things aren't lining up on why your data's bad, effectively. So if I go through Power Query now and do a similar thing, I'll access it via Excel, but the difference is this time I'm going to come in by this data option and import it as a CSV file. And there's my file. So can you see that? It's not too small, is it? I don't know how to make that bigger. Yeah, so you can see, again, it's jumped in and it's tried to fix my codes by changing them to dates, which is the last thing in the world I ever wanted it to do. But I can fix it this time. I can say, instead of just loading it, go into transform data, and this is where it runs up. It runs up the Power Query editor. Like I say, it's still quite Excel-like, but it allows me to do a lot of things a lot easier. So here we've got this code that's been converted to dates, but now I can go back in and just say, no, actually that's the date. Oh, not date, sorry. Get rid of that. Come back to that actually. Here you go. So I've set that to text now, and it's got my original text instructions. So particularly things like SFG20, that's a nightmare if ever you try and process SFG20 related data in Excel. So you can quickly get those back to the formats you want them. If you want to trim a column like I did in the previous one, I can come up here and I can transform that and change into format, sort of say, okay, trim it. And it will trim it in that column. I've not had to create another column. I've not had to create another formula or delete columns. It's all there. And while I'm there, there's a lot of this type of thing. Some of the things that would be a function and would be an extra column are now accessible straight from here. So I've capitalized that. You can do things with, you can select, you can select columns. Sorry, I've got 2 keyboards here. I keep typing on the wrong one. You can select columns like this, and you can say, go to add column, and with you. I'll come back to the date one. Bear with me on that. But here's another example. So this I want to break up in the same way that I broke the other one up. So I could come in and I can do my delimiter option as before, colon, do it. And rather than it overwriting the data, it quite sensibly just inserts whatever columns it needs in there. Now this is messed up. So I had a column in there that I didn't spot, and it split that time up. But what you're doing by using Power Query is you're building up a history of what you've done, and you can go back at any time, and you can delete those steps or change what you want to do in them. So in this instance, I might go back and say, well, I do want to do it on colon, but I only want to do it on the leftmost colon. And now I've got all of those codes in the first one, and then I've got all my strings in the second one. And likewise, I've got version numbers on the ends of these strings, but some have got 3 words, some have got 4 words, some have got 1 word, but it's very easy just to split that again, but say, do it on the rightmost delimiter. So I've now pulled off, oops, I've done it on colon. I'll go back and edit it, split the rightmost one, but split it on custom. Underscore on keyboard, underscore and it's pulled off the versions just from the end and left the other ones there. So, I mean, what I'm trying to show here is there's a lot of things here that this does that work very well when you compare to what you're doing in Excel. And you can take that further. So this one here, we've got columns with people's names in at the end, as an example. And I could split that because that's not really very good for analysis. But what you can do is, instead of just splitting it, I could split it on comma, on each comma. But now I can say, I want the results as rows. And what that will do is that will expand that out and give me repeated rows for each one of the elements in that individual comma separated list. And once you've got that all together, once you get your data, there's loads more that I can do. I've got 5 minutes, I'm very aware of that. So these are just a few tasties that if you've used Excel extensively, it should make you go, oh, that's going to save me hours. So here I can save my output as main, but I can duplicate this. Duplicate this. I could say, this is my CRIS data, if you like. And what I want to do here is I want to filter this view on this just to the things that are related to CRIS. And I might duplicate it again.
Chris,
Yep.
If I just ask a couple of questions now, am I
Sure.
interrupting your thread?
No, good.
Yeah. So just to help people understand, the reason we're doing this is that we manage for Sodexo all their master asset type libraries. So this is they've got 3,500 standard asset types, and they need to map each of those asset types to SFG 20 and Uniclass and various other standards. And when they win a new contract, they're generally given an asset list that has been created by the previous incumbent, and they have to make sense of that. The way in which that other data set is created is obviously not using their taxonomy and their classification. So what Chris is doing regularly is helping them with that, being able to take things that are in spreadsheets, in databases in some cases, and then gluing them together. So what Chris is showing you here is how we go about doing that, but he goes about doing that. But obviously, this is quite technical, and we may be losing some of the people in the group.
Sorry,
but your point of the point of view being here is that you probably have got a problem statement. You've probably got an issue that you need help with, that either what Andrew's shown you, you may be doing yourselves. It may be that when you've done that, you then want, for example, somebody like Chris to do something with something like Power Query. The key thing, the most important thing there is understanding what it is that you want to do. And that's what we'd really like you as a group to be thinking about. You've got information. What would you like it to, how would you like it gluing together? What type of outputs would you want? And then we can work together to bring that out. And we're very happy to show you how to do it as well.
Yeah. Just to wrap this up, sorry, I thought I would be talking to more data engineering people, which is why I went granular. But just to wrap this up, what you've done here is you created this history, and this history of the transformation that you've done on that file can be saved and applied to other files that are in the same format. And likewise, I can go back and edit any of these steps. I can reorder them. It's a repeatable process that isn't cast in stone, and at no point am I throwing any data away. So if I finish this off now and just say close and load, what I'll get rather than that initial TSV file, like I got in the first example when I opened it, is I just get those tables that I output. So there's George's tasks, there's my tasks as a separate table, there's all the data I was processing. So rather than it coming in and it being ad hoc, there's now a process involved, and that process is repeatable.
Okay.
So I think that's me. Yeah,
But
and
that's
literally just the tip of the iceberg. Copilot is an excellent tool for getting help on how to do some of that stuff, and YouTube has a whole raft of great tutorials that I could point you at if anyone's interested.
I'll tell you what, because we use within BIM for housing, BIM and asset management, with all our operations and recruitment and stuff, a lot of Excel. And I just messaged Jess, will this help us? He said yes. So you're going to be getting a call. Paul Womack.
Yes, thank you. So if you've got, say, apologies, I'm going to call it a spreadsheet, but if you've got an asset, so each line is an asset, will you be able to give that asset a unique reference number to assist with the golden thread?
I don't think that's necessarily related to Power Query, but there are a number of ways that you could give a data set unique IDs at the beginning of each line, if that's what you're after.
Potentially, yes. And then if there's any changes, that is then monitored and each change is recorded. Yeah,
well, again, the monitoring and the changes is dependent on where that data set is being used, how it's being used, but this would certainly play a role in making sure that the data was correct to start off with in whatever system you did decide to use.
I think one of the things, Paul, is that ideally the information should be created at the outset by the author in the right format, following the right nomenclature and the right taxonomy. And that's where people like Mo and Pierre would say this needs to be done properly at the outset, and you shouldn't need Excel, right? But the fact is that one, we're working with most 95% of the projects we're working with have already been built. So a lot of the information is already existing. So you can't go back to the author and say, do it differently. Also, to be frank, in many cases, the expertise of the people that are actually creating the data, in many cases, isn't adequately high from a data perspective, because that isn't what they've been trained to do in many cases. So to some extent, what we're doing here is we're putting in place something that you can fix things after they've not been done properly, if that makes sense.
So it's kind of a revision. It's kind of revision and correction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why it's called data engineering. Really, it's engineering or re-engineering the data. Yeah.
So it's re-engineering. Oh, that's different, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
Is anybody else
transforming as another word into that? Because I think that's quite accurate. In
that's a good one.
It's
that's
taking
good. Yeah.
a set of data and making it into something else, whether that's combining it with other data sets or cleaning it or fixing it or anything like that. Transformation is really the word that I'd use.
That to me makes more sense. Anyway, how about anybody else? Have you got any comments on what Chris has been saying? We've had a few comments on in the chat, actually, largely about Ricardo's nationalities, which I don't really think is devastatingly interesting to the rest of the group. But anybody else got anything to say? Anybody else got any comments on what Chris has said? Useful? Interesting. Theo.
Yeah, sorry. Hi guys. My name's Theo.
Hi there.
HP Revis. I just wanted to reiterate what Chris said. I think Power Query is an excellent tool. I think one of the things to highlight is that, and I don't know whether you really drilled in on it, Chris, but it remembers steps, not functions. So because of that, it's extremely scalable. So if you go from, and I don't know if you said this, but if you go from a table which has 3 rows to a table that has 1,000 rows, because it remembers the steps, including the relationships between all the tables you created, that's still a single process, and all you have to do is click refresh, and it memorizes everything you've done beforehand. And I find that incredibly useful on our projects, because I'm the only one using it, and I have to run a bunch of spreadsheets and update a bunch of spreadsheets, and it's all one click for me because I've set it all up to refresh itself.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, just to reiterate, it is a really powerful tool, and it's worth the learning.
Pierre, you had your hand up and now you put it down.
Yep. So a quick one, I think, Chris, well done. And the same thing with Thea. The problem is that we're repeating the same problems throughout. So basically what I'm trying to put forward here is that most database on Mortar, or just a validation database, is to go and say, what are the kinds of problem statements that we have, the problem cases, and the methods that they should be done. Exactly like Richard had said earlier, is that it should be done at the beginning of the project. Set up those definitions there. But it's also to start investigating what are the problems that we're getting with existing data, existing assets, etc., to make them work. Those little steps, so that, again, Power Automate, Power Query, that whole set of Power Tools are incredibly powerful for doing certain things. But you don't want to end up rebuilding it. The amount of wasted effort rebuilding each and every time because of the little nuances really is a painful exercise. Just my opinion.
That was the point I was making, Pierre. If we can actually identify what the problems are as a group, then we can collectively start to come up with solutions to that. And obviously the biggest solution is make sure that people don't make a mistake at the beginning. Yeah, but in practice, when you've got a project where there's, I think most people understand on this called a BIM model, there's no such thing as a BIM model. There's probably 20 BIM models or 30 BIM models, and each of them has been created for a particular discipline, perhaps. And then you've got to federate all that information. And therefore, it's not as straightforward as that. You're absolutely right that that's what we should be doing, though.
Chris.
Yeah, it's just to agree, really. I mean, I'm completely behind getting the data right and getting systems right up front and in advance. The stuff that I've been through there is from more of the real world. You know, data arrives today and they want something back tomorrow. You know, they're not going to go back and retool their systems or processes. So it's about getting something out. So it's purely a pragmatic way of working with data in the interim until
face rather than theory.
Yeah, it's means to an end. I fully accept that.
Okay, well, that's all been very interesting. So now we're going to move on. We're going through a process here, as you can probably gather. We're going to Tim Aiken, who has been developing artificial intelligence, working with artificial intelligence since before it got shortened to AI. Right, George?
Yep, that's right.
Tim.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So we've gone from sort of quite technical stuff to low code. So what I'm going to do is give you two problems which use no code, but they give solutions. So as with all processes, we get a problem. And in this case, this was my problem. Somebody had said, I've got 5 door schedules, but for a building, but one of the door schedules is missing. And that was the steel doors, which, as you probably would appreciate if you're in facility management, are quite important elements. But there were drawings for each one of the fire doors. So we've got those as PDF files, and that is the fact. That's just what we've got. So we couldn't go back to the beginning. We couldn't say, could you produce it as a spreadsheet? We just had this. So what was the process? And why did I want to transform it into a schedule? Well, in our system, what we have is the ability to click on a door, get information about the door, and connect to a schedule. So it makes absolute sense to have all the doors as a schedule, and then we can display the record. So that's what we want to do. So that's the objective. So how did I start? Well, I used my go-to new buddy, which in this case is ChatGTP, but I use a variety of AI tools. either from ones that are you can access, you can pay for them. They've got different models, and you can also use LLM Studio, which allows you to run it locally. And in this case, what I did was took one of the PDFs and said, right, is there anything I can read out of there? So that was the query, and then you can see what the results were. So there was a bit of an opportunity here. So I thought, right, okay, so if we can read one drawing, could we do it and get some more information out of it? So what we want to be able to do is produce the spreadsheet. Now, it's a series of, it's a development, it's a series of conversation to get to a point where it does the job. And then you just say, okay, now let's put that into one prompt that will allow me to repeat that for anything else that I get again. So that was the one that was used. That was the model, which is 4.0. The limitations of using the web interface is that in any one upload, you can only upload 10 files. So if you've got 20 or 30, you're going to have to do it 2 or 3 times, but you can get all 30 files up and then process them all in one go. Or you can say, keep adding it to a data table. And then, and as I said, if you're not getting the columns that you want, you know, it's just about finessing it. It is a conversation, but at the end of the conversation, you just get it to say, right, give me all that as one prompt, which is the great thing about using these things. So no coding involved, really. The second problem is one that I think just about everybody in facility management has, which is finding information out of a whole series of records. And we just need a way to do it quickly. And if we use Project Extranet, and they've all got, you know, ways of filtering the data, but they're quite complicated. They can be quite complicated. It can be quite fiddly. And what we really want to do is just use a natural language query, which is what we would do is if we had an assistant, and we would just say, just go and get me the fire drawings or fire strategy drawings, or find me any documents relating to fire doors. So how do we do it? Well, in this case, all I did was get to a point where I said, well, actually, I want things to go and be listed out like this. So I'm going to give you a spreadsheet, but it's going to be quite simple. But it's going to have a lot of columns, but the only columns I'm really interested in these. And I want to get it formatted like this. And now, when you're using something online like this, you can't actually access the files locally, so it can't access. So the link has got to be something that you can cut and paste. So this was the output. So they, as I said, they won't allow you direct access for a good reason. And again, it's just a matter of refining the output. And then this is the prompt that I developed quite quick, initial prompt that I developed quite quickly. It was as simple as that. And those are the results. So it actually worked, and you just can keep using it. So that's a go-to thing that anybody can do. If you've just got a spreadsheet of record drawings that have got a series of parameters, maybe they've got the categories, the work packages, the companies, maybe a bit of attribute data, a title, a file name. The language model can actually look through those and start to make connections that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of. And it isn't going to be perfect, but it's certainly going to get you through a record set of, say, 20,000 records and get you down to half a dozen, which are probably relevant, or in the case of what I was looking for, ones that were just to do with the floor. And as I said, that's the output. So at the end of it, as I said, this is the prompt that I got it to write as well. So once finishing the conversation, just get it to do the prompt. And that is me done as quickly as possible.
But very effectively, very effectively.
Richard, can I just explain that that's the technique, just so that the people that
absolutely.
That's the technique that Tim used to do what I showed right at the beginning, which was being able to go through and interrogate PDF reports and then turn that into meaningful object data that is then held in the database that can then be used from an asset management perspective. So as Chris was saying, what we're doing is we're transforming information that's been produced for a purpose.
Yeah, it was a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit more complicated than that, George. I don't want to sort of make people think that it can do absolutely anything. What it can do is it can guide you to being able to curate a solution, because that solution also ended up with us with developing code. And then also trying out different techniques as well. So because I'm in research, obviously we're going to try out different methodologies and things like that and find out what works best. To give you an example, I was given a problem this morning that looked like it was going to, and how somebody had started to create a solution, and within 5-10 minutes I had a new solution, which now they seem to have given me the problem. But there you go. You know, it's because what this new world of AI allows us to do is explore faster and more intelligently towards things and bring up things that we may never have known about or not experienced. And if it does throw up things you don't understand, you just say, what does that mean? So it's literally like that.
The point I'm making, Tim, right, is that the techniques that you've shown, all three of you have shown, are things that we're doing as ActivePlan on a day-to-day basis to create better asset information. Now, if anybody on the call wants to make that transformation and make that's something that we can help with, and that's I don't mind pitching the fact that that's something that we're interested in doing, but importantly, we're also interested in sharing how we're doing it with this community so that we can work together to, you can do some of it, we can do some of it. And the ultimate goal is having much more usable, findable asset information that can then be kept up to date.
Yeah, can I just say, one of the most valuable things that we found in developing this community is that a cat can look at a king. You can have the head of the owner of a development sitting next to the guy figuratively in a meeting, the guy who's installing the fire doors. But you can also have two competitors sitting figuratively next to together, sharing information. So we make no apology that sometimes we use specific companies to talk about things, because it's going to happen. If a company's got a solution, we want to see it, don't we? And that applies to all companies. And I think George would say that, as would other companies that have been involved with BIMPA housing and building asset management over the last 4 or 5 years, everybody benefits.
Yeah, I mean, we're working now with Mo from Malta, and those are the sorts of things, that sorts of collaboration that is absolutely critical.
Well, it's changing the game, mate, isn't it? That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Right, somebody had their hand up and they put it down. It was Max.
Yeah, hi everybody. I just wanted to mention on the previous example that was shown, there's a thing called Microsoft AI Hub. It's been mentioned before in this chat, and you can use the form processor tool from them to effectively extract data from PDFs. You can basically kind of train it to identify specific labels and specific data fields, and you can then run Power Automate to connect basically to extract it and auto-populate into Excel spreadsheets, which I just thought would suggest.
No, Max, I mean, if that's something that you're doing within Associated Architects, then that would be really useful to get involved with as well.
Well, I did a mini demo, very high-level demo, sort of, where we just take in survey, asbestos survey, and they all come with all different forms and shapes and stuff like that. And we just kind of looked at extracting room number, location, couple of bits. So, and it seemed to be using quite well. You can also process like drawing numbers and all sorts of stuff. But it seemed to be relatively precise. It does, however, mixes up O's and zeros, but as of letters and numbers. But overall, I think it seems fairly reliable.
Yeah, I think what's happening is that what a lot of people don't understand is that what the AI is doing is it's actually writing code underneath to be able to process stuff, particularly if you're giving it, say, PDFs. I mean, the example I was given one where they'd put room schedules into a PDF as images. I mean, the date, it was data, got turned into an image and then got pasted into a Word document that then got created into a PDF. And it's just like, you've just really nobbled us there, but we can just reverse it back out now. But what you're doing there is using OCR. So where you get the problem with zeros and O's is because of the OCR. But then if you're then processing it through LLMs, then it will recognize that I think that should be a zero because the rest of the format is like that. So there's good examples of that where it's actually just make the logical jump, which just standard programming processors don't.
Sorry, can I just say, Mo, just before you pick up, there's a couple of things I'd like to say quickly. One is, if there's anybody else like Max that's actually within the practice, within their organization, they've got people that are doing this work, please put them in touch with us, because we really want to get this community to start sharing experiences, because the fact is, if everybody's solving the same problem using the same methods, that's very inefficient. We can learn from each other if we can share those problems and then bring that back. The second thing is, before I hand over, is that over the next 2 days, or the rest of we've got several more workshops coming up, which are practical workshops that we're interested in getting people involved in. We've got one at 3:30 called Whatney Market, and what Whatney Market is, it's one that we're doing a scan to asset process over the next 2 or 3 months. So if you're interested in that, come along at 3:30. Just say that you put in the chat, say that you want to come to Whatney Market. Tomorrow morning, we've got one on data centers where we're doing the same type of exercise. And then we've got another one tomorrow afternoon on creating as-built models using 360 photography. If you want to be involved in that, then let us know. And then we've also got one finally on the Golden Thread Task Force, which is very heavily subscribed. Actually, we've got a lot of people signed up for that. But if you want to get involved in that, then put it in the chat. Sorry, Richard.
Right. Okay. Mo, you put your hand down.
Yeah, I was just conscious of time. I was just going to say, really liked actually what Tim put out, and I was going to build on what Max was saying, really, because I think what's interesting about things like ChatGPT and Claude is we can start exploring a potential use case, but then if you look at like the use case that Tim was putting out, they're highly repeatable. And I think that's where AI agents are going to play a big role. So every time a drawing is uploaded to CDE, for example, you want to extract things like the title block from it and many other things, right? So I just wanted to know if you were exploring agents.
Yeah. Agents are going to absolutely transform things, because when we're looking at things like the fire and safety bill, and the amount of processing that you have to do to actually put things together to show that you're actually complying, it's a real ball ache. And if you had an agent that actually was able to go through through at the granular levels. You wouldn't say, read these 1,000 PDF files. What you would do is say, read this information at the different levels, and then when you need to, just interrogate the files to make sure the information is actually in there or in another place, and start to create me a network so I can prove if I get audited, or even for my own company, just report to me how you're progressing, etc. So that's one example of how to use agents. The other in the facility management market is to use the agents to actually monitor how well the building is performing. I mean, we see all this with, the digital twins, which unfortunately are only good if you've got data coming back that has information about performance. And sometimes the performance is very, very granular. It's like, I've only got meter readings. Well, that's not going to tell you about occupancy, is it? You're going to have to infer stuff unless you're actually measuring, just got sensors that just measure, foot flow through the entrance doors for one example, or you're able to measure things at, say, switchboards or at plug levels, or to see how often things are being used. Things like in housing, where we've got huge issues of humidity and damp and mold, all because the tenants or the occupiers don't know when to ventilate a space, but you're not able to actually monitor it. And there's massive opportunities, massive.
Right, sorry, I'm going to interrupt because we're over time and people are leaving, and I just want to make the point. If you're interested in having a chat, a 15-20 minute chat to talk about where you are and where you could be going with Andrew, Chris, or Tim, put Andrew, Chris, or Tim in the chat. And it's like speed dating, isn't it? And we'll get you, we'll sort you out with a quick 20 minutes. I shouldn't say that either, should I? Moving forward, we've also, let me just remind you of the meetings. Whatley Market is in half an hour, I think. So put Whatley Market in the chat if you want to come along to that. It's a live project. Tomorrow we've got Data Center, another real project. That's quite an exciting one, actually. I would recommend that. Then after that, we've got something on schools, talking about new build and retrofit. Then we have, it's a marathon day tomorrow, we have 360 as built. That's another good one. And rounding off the day, we have Golden Thread Task Force. The Golden Thread Task Force. If you don't know about that, then you must come along, because it's something that is moving very quickly and is very exciting. So, anything else, George? Anything else I should have put for chat into the chat?
I don't know about Chris and Tim, but this is matching my experience of speed dating so far.
The mind boggles, Andrew.
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
I'm quite delighted no one's typed any of our names in.
Well, it was a toss-up when I said X Factor or speed dating. I just went for the gutter. Okay, anybody else got anything to say on this? It's been quite an insightful meeting, hasn't it? And I think there's a lot to process. Anybody else? Okay, then I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to say thank you for an amazing meeting, and thank you to the 4 presenters very much, and hope to see you all again over the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Take care. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.